It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to a episode of Around the 412. It is, and the reason I'm so hesitant to continue with the intro is like this is so weird because we are going to be talking about this, but Mike Tomlin, this is the first time that we've recorded an episode that Mike Tomlin has not been the head coach of the Steelers. It's the first time since we have been children that Mike Tomlin is not the head coach of the Steelers. Sorry, just getting that out there. This is Around the 412. I'm Tyler. That is Smitty. Check out all the freaking, what are they called? Sponsors in the description. Sorry. My mind's blown by the whole non-Mike Tomlin thing anymore. Let's just get into the show. Sorry. The intro is kind of chalked, by the way, because I'm not used to like recording it.
Wow.
Because we haven't done one in a while because of sicknesses, timeline, all that sort of stuff. Realistically, if we were going based off our normal schedule, this show wouldn't be happening, but we have the news that we have, which is Mike Tomlin is no longer the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we haven't recorded a show in a while. So if I'm being completely 100 with you, in my head, this was Steelers Saturday sit down, and I don't do the intro for that. So there was a brief pause, and I realized, oh wait, I'm the one talking. And then I realized what we were going to be talking about, and so then I forgot what to even say. So let's just get right into it.
All right. What a whirlwind. I wouldn't even say 24 hours, 12 hours for the Pittsburgh Steelers, really. When you looked at them hosting the Houston Texans last night to wrap up Super Wildcard Week on Monday Night Football. And then what you've already said taking place with Mike Tomlin stepping down after 19 seasons as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, all happening within just over 12 hours of each other when you think of the final whistle for last night's game compared to getting that news shortly after 2 p.m. today. Pretty crazy. Like, I was fully prepared whenever we recorded this week for us to be talking about the culmination of the 2025-2026 Pittsburgh Steelers season. And it's hard to even focus on that small picture because we're talking about the culmination of 19 seasons of the Pittsburgh Steelers under Mike Tomlin. And peeling back the fourth wall a little bit here and getting a little bit vulnerable. I don't care what the reaction is typically to what people say, feel how you feel, let your emotions be your emotions. I'm not going to lie to you. I cried today after seeing this news. This is something that I think on here we've openly said at best we've been neutral on. At worst, going back to 2023, we've pushed for this to be the case. And it wasn't the team's decision. Like, if Mike Tomlin doesn't step down, make no mistake, he's still going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach in 2026. The Rooneys were not going to make this decision. So while it's a decision that I'm happy that happened, I'm very curious as to if that grass is greener. At some point, you got to find out. It's hard for me to not be emotional about it because there's just so much, like you said, of our childhood and so many memories that are tied into this tenure, whether it's the Pittsburgh Steelers or not. Just think about everything, the culmination of 19 years of life, everything that's taken place, all the love gained, all the love lost, all the life memories that have been created in this time, all the memories that I created with you and people within our friend group and my dad, my mom, like just my family. There's so many things that have happened during Mike Tomlin's tenure that I just directly thought about when I thought about this coming to an end. It's the end of not just a chapter, a book, I feel like, of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So while I felt like it certainly was time for this to take place, it was hard for me to not be emotional about it because it's 19 years. Anything that happens for 19 years deserves to be celebrated and respected. And I know that it hasn't been great as of late, and certainly you could always ask for more. And I don't mean that, I don't want to say this and come off as complacent for what we've been given, but I still certainly do have an appreciation for what we did have during that time and always being in the mix and always playing competitive football games right down to the end. So thank you, Mike Tomlin, for the memories that you were certainly a part of creating. Thank you for my Steelers fandom. I mean, I came in at the very end of Bill Cowher, really. I remember very little of it. Mike Tomlin has been the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach pretty much my entire Steelers fandom. So thank you, Mike Tomlin. Can't wait to see what's next for both you and for the organization.
We were born in 1995. Bill Cowher was the head coach of basically the entire first part of our life. But let's be honest. He won the Super Bowl with the Steelers when we were 10 years old. We remember parts of that year, those years and parts of that Super Bowl, but it's not like it is today. And it's not even like it was with Super Bowl 43. With Super Bowl 43, let's see, that was February of 2009. So we were 13, almost 14 years old at that point. So we remember a little bit more. We were a little more conscious about what was going on with the game of football, with the Steelers, and just the NFL in general, and sports in general. And I always like to say this when I talk about the Penguins, and talk about the history of the Penguins with in regards to Sidney Crosby, and how basically all of my conscious sports viewing has had Sidney Crosby involved. And what I mean by that is just actually being aware of what's taking place on the field or on the ice. Sidney Crosby's involved. I could say the same thing for Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin was named head coach in January of 2007. I was 11 years old. You were 11 years old. I would turn 12 a month later. So for the basically
no iPhones yet.
No iPhones yet. I was in 6th grade. We were in 6th grade. And for basically the entire adulthood of my life, adolescence of my life, Mike Tomlin has been the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And another way we like to put it, in terms of timeline, we always like to bring up how TJ Watt had not played a professional snap whenever we started this podcast. Well, Mike Tomlin had completed 10 years as head coach before we recorded an episode of this podcast. And he just ended his 19th season as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not only is that giving us the timeline for how long we've been doing the show, but also a timeline for how Mike Tomlin has been the coach. He is what I think of when I think of the Pittsburgh Steelers in my lifetime. And it was, for a long time, I related the Steelers to having the coolest coach in the NFL. That's what it felt like growing up whenever he took over as the coach, whenever we won Super Bowl 43, even when we lost Super Bowl 45. Those years, it felt like we had the coolest coach in the NFL, the Tomlinisms that came out, and it was a lot of fun. And a lot of memories were made. And that's why I think that this moment is bittersweet. And a lot of fans, I feel like over the years or over maybe even the next few weeks or months, will probably recognize it a little bit more, or I hope so at least, because I'll get it right out of the gate, kind of like you did, where I was at best very neutral about Mike Tomlin over the last several years. And at times calling for, this is it. This is the time you need to move on this very show. And while I do agree 100% that I think this is the perfect time for him to step down, as other times I thought were the perfect time for him to step down as head coach. And so while I'm happy that is taking place, and I'm excited to see what the future of this organization is going to look like and how they take this process and run with it, I do think it is a little bit bittersweet as well, just for the things that I mentioned, how basically for 20 years of our life, for 2/3 of our life, Mike Tomlin has been involved with that. And we have been spoiled, quite literally. And I think that while the 7-game losing streak in the postseason, no postseason win in 10 seasons, that is frustrating and is the loudest thing that people yell when they talk about Mike Tomlin, and is one of the loudest things that we have said too. And we're not saying that that's not a criticism. It for sure is. But also, I feel like as time goes on, people will appreciate the things that Mike Tomlin did. And I know a lot of things get talked about when it comes to the winning season thing. Never had a losing season. And I get it. At the end of the day, season by season, especially in the last several years, that has started to mean less. But I think that as time goes on, Steeler fans will look back at that. I will look back at that and realize just how impressive that actually was, not only for the time span that it took place, but also looking at some of those teams that he had. And I think over the last 6 years, from 2019 to now, I think that that's even more impressive, and something that we're going to look back on fondly when it comes to Mike Tomlin. Sure, he did not have the playoff success that we would have liked in the last part of his career as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. But he did win a Super Bowl. Granted, there will always be the naysayers saying that it is cowards players. I understand that people feel that way, but Tomlin won them the Super Bowl, brought them to another. Happenstance, they lose that Super Bowl. It's unfortunate, but you can't win them all. 8 division titles, no losing seasons. While I do think that it is the right moment and I'm excited for the future, I'm thankful for what Mike Tomlin has did, and I think that as time goes on, a lot of Steeler fans are going to feel the same way.
It's a little bit of like apples to oranges here. Different coaches, different sports, different levels of success. But I do feel that there are some parallels that can be drawn with the way the Penguins fans are going to respond to Mike Sullivan. I think that it was pretty clear there at the end that like we were all kind of pushing him out the door and wanted to cut ties and move on and felt like it was stale and certainly time for it to happen. But I mean, immediately when he's gone, right, we're talking about the 2 cups and all the things that they were able to accomplish in that period of time. And I just think that irreverence is going to continue to grow as we get further removed from it. And I think it's going to be the same in the case of Mike Tomlin, where as we get further away, we're going to, outside looking in, be like, it was impressive what he was able to accomplish, albeit not to the level that we had hoped. And to be honest with you, I don't want to turn this into like a bass session because it certainly be that. There's time and place for that to take place. I never really questioned, and who am I to question, but just giving an opinion here of somebody, again, outside looking in that just talks about this. I still maintain that I believe that he's a great motivator of men and a great leader. And it's hard to find somebody to corral 53 plus grown men and corral them in a way and cultivate them in this way that he's been able to, and get them to respond and get the best out of them. So from that aspect, I never really question it. From like an X's and O's perspective, and in terms of like roster construction, I think that that's where there's some to be desired. And I think that that's why, for me personally, more so than the head coaching responsibilities of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I question his role with that type of stuff more than anything else. So if he wanted to, I think there still certainly is a place for him in the NFL. I don't know if after his time off, maybe he wants to step into a different role that isn't coaching. Not sure. Maybe there still is a place for the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point down the line within the organization. We'll see.
But you have his rights.
Just wanted to put that. Yeah, I'm very curious as to how the whole thing going to play. I mean, it's very, Sean Payton-esque. We've seen this play out the way that it has when he went from the Saints to the Broncos. So we'll see if he does want to get back into coaching, if the Steelers will receive compensation for him doing so, what that ends up looking like. But certainly, yeah, a ton of admiration for me and from you for Mike Tomlin and what he was able to accomplish. And like I said, we're going to find out if that grass is green. There's only one way to find out. At some point, you got to take that leap, and the Steelers would not have done that on their own. So Mike Tomlin kind of making that leap for him. Do feel like we got to play an ad, so we'll do that, and then we'll come back, keep talking about Mike Tomlin, then turn the page, start talking about maybe some other coaching candidates, and I feel like we probably should talk about this game that wrapped up the Pittsburgh Steelers season as well. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412 here. Got to take a quick second to tell you about our friends at Game Changers. That's their logo. This is one of their shirts. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Doesn't matter if it's sports, music, movies. They got you covered with their designs. Over 5,000 different designs in that catalog over there. GameChanger.la or Pick6.la. You'll save yourself $10 when you use the code AT412 on your order. The link is below to both of those sites. Go check out their entire catalog. Again, 5,000 different designs. If you go with the black or the white, it'll be true to size. If you go with the pepper, which I'm wearing right now, or the ivory, they'll be a bit oversized. It's a heavyweight material. Beautiful stuff. Go check them out. And again, save yourself $10 using code AT412 at checkout. I am curious what your thought is on this, though, because still trying to, I'll be honest, it's not like I've fully wrapped my mind around this, that Mike Tomlin isn't going to be on the sidelines next year for this team. I think it's hard to process it all, but that is going to be the case. So while that was taking place today, then my mind shifted to the players currently on the team and the impact it could have on them with Mike Tomlin no longer in the fold. I mean, a week ago, if you would have asked me, I would have thought absolutely the door is open for Aaron Rodgers to be back again. I think that the team would want him to be. I'm not sure if the player would want to be. Now, I think that door is closed. I think that was largely Mike Tomlin. You start to think about Cam Hayward. Could he hang him up after the season if Mike Tomlin he's certainly not going to be the case without Mike Tomlin in the fold. You think about some of these older vets on the team, namely those two that are getting up there, and just, guys that came here because of Mike Tomlin. I don't know. Has your mind gotten there at all in terms of like guys currently on the roster?
I did think about that. I thought that this pretty much shut the door on an Aaron Rodgers return, at least in my opinion. Aaron Rodgers has been very outspoken about his respect for Mike Tomlin, and this goes before he was even in a Steeler uniform. It's very evident to everybody that Mike Tomlin is the biggest reason why he came to Pittsburgh to close out or potentially close out his career. And while I wasn't even sure if there was going to be a necessarily reunion that they were going to have in 2026, he might have just hung him up after this year. I thought that as long as Mike Tomlin was here, that was going to be a opportunity or at least an option that the Steelers could look to if Aaron Rodgers was willing to do so. Now I just don't even think that it's realistic. I think that you would be talking about a head coach that would have to really sell coming back to Aaron Rodgers, a guy that was already considering this his last year or potential last year. And if it's not a guy that Aaron Rodgers is really, really sold on after a couple of conversations, I have a hard time seeing Aaron Rodgers being the type of guy to maybe take a chance on a coach is the bad way to word it, but that's the only thing that comes to mind on what would actually be his last year of his career. I mean, maybe obviously not the way that Aaron Rodgers wants to go out in his career with that type of loss, considering how he performed in that loss as well.
Pick six is the last throw.
Pick six is the last throw. It's not perfect. It's not ideal, but going out knowing that Mike Tomlin was your last head coach, maybe the grass isn't always greener from the player's perspective too. I mean, as fans, we talk about that a lot whenever it comes to moving on from a head coach. And that's a devil's advocate that is brought up frequently when it was talked about moving on from Tomlin, but maybe that's the mindset that a lot of players have as well. And in the shoes of Aaron Rodgers, maybe he's not willing to see what is on the other side.
I think there's one scenario where Aaron Rodgers plays football next year. The Minnesota Vikings, where he wanted to be, I think, this year. Now they've seen J.J. McCarthy for a little bit. I mean, the injuries this year didn't give him a full
scope.
9? They saw J.J. McCarthy and they saw 9. They saw both of them. They got the full experience.
So which one's which? The good one or the bad one?
Well, 9, I guess, to me is the erratic one.
Okay.
Which can be good or bad. J.J. McCarthy is a bit more more of a the stabilizer a little bit, at least. I just think that's so stupid, by the way. But I do think now, after maybe having an idea of what they have in him, I wonder if they revisit it and they're more open to bringing in Aaron this year.
That could be the case. And if I'm Aaron Rodgers, looking at what you have, if you are playing one more year, looking at what you have, would you rather take a year, a chance on a potential first-time head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And the only reason I say that is because a lot of the candidates that I'm sure they're going to be looking at would be the first-time head coach. And you look at the history of their candidates, not that there's many of them to go off of, but they are first-time head coaches whenever they do become the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. So just kind of fitting that mold is if they go off of that. But also, would he want a offensive coach for his last coach? I mean, if I'm him, I wouldn't mind that. Having a guy like Kevin O'Connell as my head coach, and seeing what he's able to do in that type of offense, because I'm sure a year after playing for Arthur Smith, he would be welcome to any sort of modern style of offense. So,
and that was coming off, Tomlin is the head coach here, but also like Saleh/Albrecht with the Jets, which is defensive minded as well. I mean, so really since LaFleur, he hasn't had the offensive mind.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe that would make sense. But I just think like if you just take Minnesota out of it and you look exclusively at Pittsburgh, I just have a hard time seeing Aaron Rodgers getting on board with whoever you bring in, selling that for one more year. I really just because I think of the only reason he was here is because of the respect that he had for Tomlin, and if he's not there, then what's he actually staying for?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know that I'm super interested in it. Like, I mean, I enjoyed the Aaron Rodgers experience more than I thought I would in 2025. That doesn't mean I have any interest in it happening.
I think he's
again,
by far the
2026.
best quarterback that they've had since Ben's retired. That does not mean that he was great, and that does not mean that I think that he should come back either.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that. I guess we could dive in. I want you to discuss this first because I don't want to like say maybe some things that I've heard in regard to this and sway opinions. I'm curious as to like who and if there is anybody that is on your mind right now as it relates to potential candidates. I'm sure you've seen some of the names that have been out there already. They're going to cast a pretty wide net, I would think. I'm curious to see who all comes in for actual interviews. Like who jumps out to you immediately though?
I mean, the one that I think has been heavily talked about, he's been in the organization before, Brian Flores. He's been a former head coach with the Miami Dolphins. And I actually saw, I think it was on Twitter, somebody joking about the worst thing that Brian Flores did as head coach of the Miami Dolphins was win too much when they were trying to tank. So I think that one, as far as like the type of coach he is, could make sense. Like any guy that I'm looking at is going to be defensive minded because I have a hard time seeing the Steelers go any other route than a defensive minded head coach, as much as I would like an offensive minded guy. And that's why I think like even, and I've seen some people throw this out there too, like a guy like Kevin Stefanski, I'm ruling that out because he's offensive minded. I do not think that the Steelers are going to roll with an offensive coach. So Brian Flores is definitely one that I would look at. I think that Jesse Minter from the LA Chargers, he's their defensive coordinator, is another guy that I would look into because I look at the mold of what you look at what Tomlin was, you look at what Chuck Noll was, and you look at what Cowher was. And they were defensive coordinators that were in their 30s that could be coaching for a long time at that position. And Jesse Minter is a guy that could fill that role. I think Brian Flores is another guy that fill that role. Like anybody younger on the younger side, I think could fill that role. Another guy that I want to throw out there that I don't know if a lot of people are going to talk about, probably unrealistic as it is, but I feel like if there is going to be a college hire, this could be a guy. And if there is going to be a job that could pry away this guy from his current college, it could be this job, is Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I think that as far as like a splash hire goes, that would probably be as splashy as you could get with that type of hire. I'm not necessarily saying that he's the guy that I would want to be the head coach, but I think that as far as the program that he's currently at with Notre Dame, the rats that they are, I think that the allure of being that head coach, it takes certain jobs to pull you out of that, especially going to the NFL and interviewing for a head coaching position for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team like that with that history too. That's a spot that I think that could be filled. And I'm not necessarily saying that I think it's ever even going to get an interview, but that's just, if I was looking from the college perspective, I think that that's a guy that I think would make sense for the position, but also makes sense for getting him out of the position that he's currently into.
I think Freeman is going to stay. The one thing I will say about him, and Alan brought this up to me, and it kind of made me like cool on the idea of Marcus Freeman, is if he comes in as a first-time guy in the NFL, really doesn't have those connections, I think the likelihood goes through the roof that Artie Smith stays on the staff as the offensive coordinator.
That's fair.
What I thought you were going to say when you went to the college ranks, say he finishes this thing off and wins a national championship for Indiana. What does Sig have left to do at Indiana already, just after 2 seasons?
That's a good point. Come home.
Local guy.
Come home to Pittsburgh. How wild of a hire would that be, though? Do you think that would be off? I understand that he wins. Google him. Like, that's all he does.
Yeah.
But how off the wall would that be of a guy that has coached FBS football? I mean, I guess James Madison was FBS for a couple years when he was there, but has coached Division I Power 4 football for 2 seasons, takes the loserest program in the history of college football, takes them to the college football playoff his first year, wins the national championship the second year, and then would be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers the year after that. Like, what?
The most restored franchise in NFL.
It's the greatest story ever told
in sports. Yeah. It's the greatest story ever told in sports already, before he even does anything with the Steelers, in my opinion. Just even getting to that path that quickly. But we say that quickly, but like, he's an older dude, which is why it kind of goes against the mold of what they've done. You looked at the 3 head coaching hires that they've made in Noel, Cowher, and Tomlin, all like in their 30s, defensive minded, which is kind of where you look. You mentioned Jesse Minter. I'm gonna throw out Chris Scholla as well, the Rams defensive coordinator, who I think is kind of at the top of the list. Albert Breer mentioned it. That's the name I've heard. That's why I didn't want to go first and talk about this, because I didn't want to like put things in your mind. But I think that there's some connections there. Obviously, the Scholla name gets your ears going. It obviously is a name that a lot of football people will know. And I think that he could poach from that staff in terms of bringing an OC along. Nate Shieldhouse is a guy that's getting some OC looks. Actually, I think the Browns might have interviewed him, I think, for their head coaching position. Maybe there was one other team that did as well. So he's certainly going to get some looks. I don't necessarily think he's going to get a head coaching opportunity right now, but certainly a promotion to OC would make sense at this point, the next McVay guy. So I think Scholla could potentially bring him as the OC. Sounds like a pretty good pairing to bring along right now. That's why, to me, he's the guy that I would probably have towards the top of my board if you're talking about getting the duo together. I think if you're talking about, in the case of Flores, a guy to me where, other than what you said in terms of him just winning too much and them not wanting that to have happen, I don't think the OC history was great with his hires there, and it's been a while, so maybe he's learned something there. I'm not saying the next one wouldn't be, but it gives me a little bit of pause at the very least. And then Jesse Minter, I'm not sure who he'd be taking, but like, to me, their staff not as appealing as the Rams and poaching from that.
For
Chris Scholla to me would be at the top of my board as we sit here right now. Well, Clint Kubiak would be, but kind of going along with your point, I'm kind of looking young defensive minded just because of the Steelers history.
Yeah. Anything offensive just gets thrown out the window for me. Unless they are really clean slate, we are changing the fabric of the organization, not just the head coach, but the way we do things. I just have a hard time seeing any offensive coach.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue.
I mean, we said it last year. Like, if last year, the Steelers would have been the team that would have hired Aaron Glenn and not Ben Johnson. And that if this happened a year ago, that would have been the way it played out. And people would have lost their minds. But we have talked about how the Steelers, while they are scared of change, they are set in a lot of their ways. And a lot of their ways, historically, and I know it's a small sample size, they hire a certain type of head coach and a certain type of mold of head coach.
I'm going to ask you a question. You'll have a little bit to think about this because I'll play the ad and then come back. Because of what you just said, they haven't had to make a coaching hire since 2007, a head coaching hire. Does that give you some pause in terms of the replacement? I know we said we're excited to find out, is that grass greener? You got to eventually take that leap. But do you have pause about who the Rooneys are going to hire and the way it's going to go, just the process of it all? Because they haven't made that since 2007 and because of them just staying true to their roots potentially. I'll play this ad and then you can give me your answer on that. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412 had to take a quick second to tell you about our friends at Keats Barbershop. That's Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkage Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do a walk-in with Tony or Ashley. Again, download the app, The Cut, to book an appointment today, or they do take walk-ins as well. Could not imagine going anywhere else. Old school vibe in there. Check them out.
Yes, I do have some pause about this hire. But I think that's part of the excitement too, is that like they might screw it up and we might see something happen that the Steelers don't normally do, which is fire a head coach after only a few years. And I'm all right with that. I think that the part of the reason that I am pretty open to whatever is going to happen in the future, is that we finally got some substantial change. It's not changing of a coordinator. It is not changing a quarterback. You're talking about changing the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had 3 since 1969. Like, this is as drastic as a change as you can nearly get in the NFL. And I think it's exciting about what the future could hold. But yes, I have been very vocal about how I think that Art Rooney II is one of the worst coaches or worst owners, in all of sports. Not just
would be
football.
a pretty bad coach. Yeah,
he probably would be a pretty bad coach, but I think he's one of the worst owners in all of sports, not just football. I know that may be a hot take for a lot of Steelers fans talking about the Rooney name in that way, but while I say that, I am also optimistic about the hire at the same time. I have some pause about what they are going to do at the head coaching position, but I'm still optimistic no matter what, mainly because change was needed. And sometimes you got to get worse to get better. And if that is the root of all of this, that's what comes from all of this, then it may be a long game. We may be not had taken the Patriots route of this and having a short turnaround and being a potential AFC champion again after only a few years of a downturn. And it could be longer than that, but I'm excited still to see where it goes. But to answer your question, short form, yes, Art Rooney II being the owner of the Steelers, he's not his dad. He's not his grandpa. I have significant pause about what they are going to do at the position.
When Mike Tomlin was hired, Dan Rooney had Art Rooney II as part of the process, who was currently just like president at the time, obviously now in a greater capacity. I'm curious to see if Art Rooney II includes Danny Rooney in the process in a similar fashion. Because that's who I would think that the keys are eventually going to be handed to. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think because of the history that we've had at head coach, very similar to the way the torch has kind of just been passed for the Green Bay Packers at quarterback. It's just almost like there's no way the next guy can continue the lineage, right? Like the odds are that this guy, like the NFL coach lifespan is about 2.5 seasons. The odds are that this guy isn't the long-term solution. There's only one way to find out, though. So, I mean, I agree, though, with pretty much everything that you said there. I just, until they miss on a hire, I understand the way that the league has changed and the cause for concern with ownership and stuff like that. But so far in my lifetime, I've only seen, since I've been born, 2 head coaches, only seen them actually hire one of those. And it went pretty well. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I agree with that. And I think that that's also why I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the people that are saying the Steelers is not a good destination for a head coach right now.
Well,
if you're strictly looking at the player personnel that's under the roster, which, by the way, it's not a bad football team. Like, you're not taking over the New York Jets. You're not taking over the Las Vegas Raiders. You're not taking over the Cleveland Browns. Like, you are.
It's funny that there are people that in the same breath can diminish what Mike Tomlin was doing and also say that this isn't a good destination because of the roster. How's that possible? If the coach isn't very good and the team's not very good, how are they always in the mix?
Well, and that's why I actually saw, I know it was on a Fox broadcast. I forget who said it this morning, but he was looking at how the 0-7 in the playoffs is more of a positive for Mike Tomlin, and when you truly look at it, than a negative for Mike Tomlin, because he is saying he dragged a lot of those teams that probably weren't actual playoff teams or shouldn't have been playoff teams, and they happened to play teams in the first round that were legitimate playoff teams or Super Bowl contenders, and just happened to get beat in the first round. While I don't necessarily
outside of the Browns and Jaguars. But,
yeah, and I agree with that. That's why I was about to say I don't necessarily agree with that with every single matchup, But I think that there is an argument to be made that a lot of those years that was the case.
That's why
Tomlin
I was saying though about
like there's no reason why I think the 23 Steelers should have made the playoffs. There's no reason that team that should have made the playoffs.
No.
But they rode Mason Rudolph into the playoffs.
They were 8-5. They were one game away from making the playoffs in 2019 with that team, with Duck and Mason, like each doing half the job. I mean, that's why he 100% overachieved with his rosters, in my opinion. To me, that's not debatable. People will debate it. To me, it's not debatable because they'll go back to the Killer Bee era. Look how many playoff games those guys actually played together. And look at the other side of the ball. There's 3 phases of the game, not just one. Anyways, that point aside, in that same breath, I'll say that he is largely the reason that those rosters were what they were. So it goes back to the thing of what I said, where it's not necessarily, to me, his biggest downfall being the coaching aspect of his role here. It was just the influence in general and how much say he had putting the rosters together and the shortcomings of that.
100%. 100%. And that's why I think that the to go back to the point of this job not being a good destination for a coach, I think that even if you just have a blind roster and you're looking at the organization you're coaching for, it is arguably the best destination for a head coach because you are pretty much guaranteed at minimum 3 years. And if you have one winning season in those 3 years, you're probably getting at least 5 or 6.
Somebody brought this up to me.
If you win a division in the first 5 years, you're probably getting like 7 or 8. Like you are going to have the longevity at the position. The Rooneys are going to give you that leash that other organizations are not going to do so. And that's why I have a hard time with anybody putting the Steelers outside of the top 3 current open positions. Not because of the roster, but because of the organization that you're actually coaching for.
Somebody brought it because I said the same thing. Like, I think that the job security is what makes it so attractive, but somebody pushed back and said, do I think that the job security only exists because they've had the coaches that are so good? Like, if they had somebody come in and had like 3 losing seasons in their first 4 or whatever, would it really be the same way? Do I feel like it would be the same way? And I thought about it for a little bit. And I mean, again, what am I really operating off of? That's a complete hypothetical that we don't have any data to point towards. But to me, I really do think it is just like a core thing for the Rooneys. I think that there is just patience and loyalty that exists there that maybe not there with a lot of other organizations. So yeah, I do think that the leash is longer. I guess, potentially we'll find out, but there's nothing that I can really point to say one way or another. That's just my feel with the way that they operate.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that you're going to get a longer leash no matter what with the Steelers organization because of how they operate. I mean, we've seen it with even the coordinators. They're very slow processing on anything when it comes to making a rash decision. We've seen that with coordinators. We've seen that obviously with the head coach. So yeah, I think that your job security is going to be good no matter what, whenever you have the Rooneys as the ownership group that you do. And that's why I think that no matter who they hire, he's going to be the Steelers coach for at least a minimum of 3 to 4 seasons. And you were going to ride this out. Like, you were going to see a full cycle of, can this head coach find a quarterback? Can this head coach turn it around? Because he's going to have the seasons to do so. So it's not I do not see them doing what the Patriots did whenever they get rid of Belichick. And whenever you get rid of Belichick, who'd they try? Jared Mayo was their head coach, correct?
Gerard Mayo, yeah.
Gerard Mayo. Gerard Mayo is only there for a year. Mm-hmm. They get rid of him to hire Vrabel. I don't blame them. The guy after the guy. I don't blame them for doing that. But in that same breath, the Steelers organization is not going to be the same as the Patriots. The Steelers organization is not going to hire a guy for a year and then can them and bring in somebody else. Even if
I just thought about something.
Even if that someone else ends up being better than the guy they currently have. They're just not going to do that.
This isn't going to I really hope this isn't going to happen. Something just popped in my mind, a scenario. Arthur Smith's contract is up after the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or supposed to be. What if they made him the head coach for a year just to kick the can down the road with the idea that they wanted to bring in a head coach and quarterback in the same year in 2027, knowing that 2026 now isn't the year for quarterback?
How would you feel about
It's
that?
very dumb. It's very dumb.
I was about to say, how would you feel about that? Because I feel
No,
like
I don't think that they need to
prob-
come in the same year together. It popped in my mind there because you were saying about Gerard Mayo kind of being put in place where it was like pretty obvious that it wasn't going to be like just a placeholder for a year. The Texans did the same thing with David Culley years ago.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think that it would probably be more beneficial for them to, if they're going to kick the can down the road for anybody, I think that it's more beneficial for them to hire a head coach. And if they were going to keep on to Arthur Smith for another year and that head coach decides to keep him on staff, kick the can down the road on an offensive coordinator and then bring in your offensive coordinator the same year you're bringing in a quarterback. I think that's more important than the head coach, mainly because I think the head coach is going to be a defensive guy. And I don't think it's going to have as big of an impact as what the OC is going to have.
You know, Alan mentioned, like I said, about the thing with Artie staying on board potentially if it's a first-year head coach. Depending on if there is like a clear and obvious OC to come with them or not, or if they have NFL ties or whatever. Does that, though, to you, because this is this is the first thing I think of when I hear that, doesn't that automatically make the job like less attractive to a head coaching candidate if you know you're not bringing your own guy along?
I think it does. 100%. I think it does. I think I'm not saying that that's what I think that will happen or should happen.
Yeah.
I think it
Alan,
does.
by the way, Alan wasn't saying this was like going to, he just threw it out there as like a possibility.
Yeah, no, and I think that it is the case that it could be less attractive, or I think it would be less attractive, and I think there could be a possibility that you keep Arthur Smith around, not only because he's the OC, and you're expecting them to probably bring in a defensive coach guy. So if you're keeping one of the defensive or the coordinators around, I think he makes sense, but also having that head coaching experience that he does to help out a first-time head coach, that could make some sense as well. But I do think that would make it less attractive for certain candidates that want to bring in their own guy at the offensive coordinator position. I think that just because of the scenario that we're playing out and keeping him on staff for a specific reason, I think that it makes more sense for the offensive coordinator to be brought in with a quarterback in the same year than the head coach, unless that head coach is going to be an offensive guy and they break their mold. That's the only time where I think that would make more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I do think that we should at least briefly maybe touch on this game and get into some other stuff. Maybe
it was bad. That was done.
We're gonna play. We'll play the one more ad here. Talk about that and get out of here. I can already tell we're gonna end up being past an hour. So buckle in. 45 minutes into this thing. We'll be back. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412 had to take a quick second to tell you about our newest sponsor, Shop Yins. A lot of people been asking me about around the 412 merch. We got it. Down below is the link, shopyins.com. Save yourself $10 off a minimum purchase of $30, which is basically like you're just buying one t-shirt if you're over there right now. Orders of $75 or more also get free shipping. And while you're over there, don't just check out our around the 412 stuff. Taylor's got Penguin stuff, Steelers stuff, Pirate stuff, a bunch of good stuff always coming out. Hoodies, I'm actually rocking mine right now. T-shirts, hats, stickers, flags. He's got a bunch of stuff, koozies going on over there right now. Go check all of it out. We appreciate the support that you guys have given us. We appreciate our guy Taylor. Go check it out, shopyins.com. Man, that was wild when I had hair. Not that you can really tell because I'm wearing a hat still, but anyways, the Pittsburgh Steelers 2025 season did come to an end on Monday night, flying under the radar because of what happened again just over 12 hours following it.
How kind of Tomlin, by the way. Change the narrative real quick.
Yeah, there you go. It kind of rejuvenated a lot of people, I think, within the fan base. They were like, playoff. There's a game?
We did a game 12 hours ago?
30-6, by the way, the final score certainly didn't feel that way, and it's probably because it was 10-6 in the fourth quarter, like several minutes into the fourth quarter. Things got out of hand, 2 defensive touchdowns for the Houston Texans. So while it ultimately, like if you just look at the final score, looks very similar to every other game within this playoff drought for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe you disagree. I certainly didn't feel like it felt the same way. I mean, it was kind of in that rock fight type feel like we were talking about, where both defenses were playing for the most part very well. Certainly the Texans part very well, start to finish. For the Pittsburgh Steelers side, mostly well until things got out of hand. And then I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's easy to kind of just like give up at that point on that side of the ball when you're not doing anything offensively and the game's already out of hand. But yeah, I mean, for a long portion of this game, not that I ever felt like the Steelers were going to win it, but it was kind of within that same vein of like where games where the Steelers do somehow, you look up at the end and they somehow did win. Like it was a rock fight, tough fought, just defense, absolutely no offense there for the most part into the fourth quarter. And then the Texans get a couple defensive touchdowns and pull away. There were several like turning points to me within this. And again, if you look and see it was a 30-6 final, maybe you're thinking like, how is this a turning point? That DK drop, I think it was the second drive of the game, to me was a crucial point for this offense. I mean, they at least go up 6-0. If not, who knows how the drive ends up going there. And then obviously the dagger, the fumble 6 on Aaron Rodgers, right after they decided to run the ball on 2nd and 12. Really bad day for Artie Smith. And it seems like every time Artie Smith has a bad day, Aaron Rodgers also has a really bad day, and it kind of coincides with each other. The offense didn't do it. Offense did not do anything last night. And to be honest, like, I understand we got to criticize them for sure, but we knew that they weren't a very good unit. And my goodness, I'm sure watching live, the Houston Texans defense had an impressive performance. Watching that in stadium, unbelievable. Watching the way that they fly around and the cohesiveness in which they rally to the ball, just unbelievable.
The physicality of which the Texans defense plays with, mainly on the back end, like their corners. And we said this on Steelers Saturday sit down, but like the way that a guy like Jalen Petrie plays, like
Jalen Petrie shedding like one-on-one blocks from DK Metcalf, like with ease.
They are so aggressive, and it's so impressive to watch. But it was, at the same time, as Steeler fans, that game was frustrating because of it. And I do think that the score is going to make this game overblown and just kind of get lumped into some of those playoff losses like we see with similar to that Buffalo game or that Kansas City game. I don't necessarily think that based off the final score it feels that way. I understand that it turned into a blowout, but I think that once that fumble 6 happened, the game kind of shut off. Like the controller died for the Steelers, or they just like gave up at that point, and they gave their little brother the controller, and so they were not really trying from that point on. I do genuinely think that they were trying up until that moment, and were keeping themselves in the game up until that moment. I think that the hard part is, and maybe this sounds silly, and maybe you'll think this is silly too, but I thought that as long as the game was 7-6. We had a chance, because somehow maybe they find themselves around the 40-yard line. And
maybe if they would have forced like 5 more turnovers.
We kick a 60-yard field goal and make it a 9-7 game and somehow squeak out of that. The defense holds. But as soon as they kick a field goal early in the fourth quarter to make it 10-6, I honestly felt like that lead was insurmountable, which I know sounds foolish. Saying a 4-point lead feels that way. But based off of what the offense was doing that game, I did not see them scoring another touchdown.
In the end zone?
They were relying on a kick of getting into field goal range and relying on the toe of Chris Boswell, staying within that 7-6 range for the entirety of the game until the Steelers were maybe able to take a lead. And then that kind of puts a needle in the arm of the defense, and they're able to close that thing out and win that game 9-7. Super ugly rock fight, like you said, and it was that for the majority of this game. Like I said, this was a very ugly football game. Like talking about it when I was talking about with the game today, with people. Very ugly football game, and I'm sure you definitely feel that way if you were the Texans and looking at the way that their offense performed too. Like I don't think that either team is happy with their offensive performances. But ultimately, I just think that the Steelers was worse. It was more insurmountable, that once you got out of that field goal potential, I thought the game was over. And obviously, a couple minutes later, it was ultimately over. You had the fumble 6, and then it just kind of climbed on itself and tumbled on itself from there, and ended up being 30-6. But as soon as that game opened up to 10-6, and it's funny I'm saying opened up to 10-6, I really thought that was a lead that the Steelers could not come back from. I thought that they were really relying on trying for a field goal.
3 points off 3 turnovers. That's the thing. Like, the Steelers were creating turnovers in this one early. CJ Stroud had 2 more fumbles that weren't recovered. I did not think he played very well. It certainly felt like the atmosphere in the stadium environment was getting to him.
2+ turnovers, by the way. Bold prediction for the defense.
Oh, you got that. So that's good. Yeah, very frustrating to watch, but that's what this Houston Texans defense does. They make the home crowds boo their teams. They've done it all year. It's their identity. I think that them in New England is going to be an absolutely horrible game to watch as a impartial fan in terms of the excitement. I think it could look a lot like the game against the Chargers. We'll see if they can get Nico Collins back in the fold, because I think that is going to be a big thing. The one thing that I will say for the Texans offense that did surprise me a little bit, because early in the game, like the first series or two, they were doing nothing on the ground. I don't know how they started moving bodies though in the run game, which was very unexpected to me, and being able to run the ball a little bit. Woody Marks had over 100 yards rushing, which he didn't do in the regular season. In the receiving game, Christian Kirk had like over half of his season receiving yards in this one as well. And also, he's a free agent, so watch for the Steelers to ultimately end up signing him in free agency now that he put that on display against them, because we know how that thing goes. But yeah, like outside of Christian Kirk absolutely torching Brandon Eccles and what they did in the run game, like Joey Porter Jr. locked up Nico Collins prior to him getting hurt. Thought Joey was phenomenal in this one, really putting a stamp on a nice season. We'll see if he gets paid this summer. But there's few and far between in terms of the bright spots to find here. Jack Sawyer, I thought actually played pretty well in some spurts, forced a turnover as well. Yeah, it's hard to find the silver linings in this one, which, again, as sad as it is to say, does not surprise me.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this game, the defense was playing good enough, creating turnovers, a lot of self-imposed turnovers too for the Texans. But I ultimately think that what I saw as the game went on was the defensive line just kind of getting blown off the ball, and they were not shedding their blocks whatsoever. And the Texans offensive line was always getting an extra push forward. They were always moving the line of scrimmage forward. You never really saw the defensive line for the Steelers really holding their ground after the first quarter on. That's when the Texans were able to start running the football effectively. I thought,
especially when the Steelers got into the rotation,
pushed around a lot. I thought that YA Black was getting pushed around. Cam Hayward did his best, but I thought that as the game went on, that he was kind of diminished in what he was able to do as well. I just thought the defensive line was very disappointing. As the game went on, it just seemed like the offensive line for the Texans was getting stronger and they were getting weaker.
Yeah, they certainly won the war of attrition.
Kyle Duggar, by the way, got worse as the game went on too.
Well, and it did come true, by the way, what we talked about, Chuck Clark playing over Kyle. And I actually thought he played relatively well, Chuck Clark, in this game. I think he only had 1 pass breakup, so I didn't get my 2 in terms of my bold prediction. But yeah, that's the conclusion of the Steelers 2025 season. In a season where we thought maybe it would be different, largely the same, would also remain the same. Tyler, I always kind of have tiptoed talking about this throughout the season, but now the season's over, and I feel like we can kind of just put it on the floor and have a discussion about it. Pat Freiermuth, 1 reception in this game. Very tough contested catch. Nice first down reception. Aaron Rodgers was asked about his utilization and basically said, I don't know. I mean, what are we talking about? Like, either you think he sucks and you're not throwing him the ball, which I don't believe to be true, or the plays aren't being designed for that to be where the ball goes, which I believe is true. When we acquired Jonnu Smith, we thought that this was a possibility. However, we thought ultimately like the talent will win out, and we thought Pat was a better player. I think that time and time again throughout the course of the season, we've seen this be true. We just talked about the secondary, where they completely reshaped it through the course of the season. And while it wasn't like, oh my goodness, like night and day better, where this team was able to carry them, this defense was able to carry them to the Super Bowl because of their secondary, they definitely made necessary adjustments to improve and get them to this point. However, they never figured the tight end thing out. They just continued to bash their head into a wall and give maybe the least productive tight end this year in Jonnu Smith opportunity after opportunity. Yards per route run, second worst. Yards per target, the worst among tight ends with 250 routes run. Jonnu Smith, maybe a little bit hyperbolic here. To me, just in terms of the opportunity given and what was produced, was the worst member of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025. Where do you go from here?
I don't know. I really think that this is a tough pill to swallow, not just because of it was a tough year for Pat individually, but the fact that we're not blind to it. You were very good friends with Pat Freiermuth, so we kind of have to have these conversations on here objectively. That like if you're Pat Freiermuth, why would you want, especially if Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator next year, if the head coach that comes in decides to keep him, or if the Steelers decide to keep him because it is a first-time head coach, why would you want to be in this offense? Why would you not request a trade if you were Pat Freiermuth? Unless you absolutely love the city of Pittsburgh and playing for this organization, why would you want to play for that guy that in 10 of your 17 games targeted you 3 or less times?
Yeah.
And you are no worse than probably the third best receiving threat on the team.
Mm-hmm. I really think I think what you said rings true in terms of how he feels about the team and how he feels about the city. I just think that like he was a good soldier this year. He said all the right things, even today during locker cleanout, said a lot of the right things, but also like clearly expressing frustration with his role, which I think is totally fair. Selfishly, I would love for him to, never leave, play out his entire career here and stay here. I say selfishly, meaning like as his friend, as a Steelers fan. And then if I take
that friend, if you leave,
if I take the Steelers fan aspect out of that, and I'm just looking at this as his friend, I'm like, get the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are we doing? I would look at this. I mean, think about this. There's a team in Kansas City. Their Hall of Fame tight end walking away, I think.
You could add another Hall of Fame quarterback that you've played with?
Yeah, that's true. Ben Roethlisberger, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes.
He just needs one more to complete the Infinity Gauntlet at that point. Down the road, he'll like play with Josh Allen.
Yeah,
last year. I
was trying to think who the other one would be, because it can't be Lamar or Burrow. We're not throwing that out there. It's tough. It's tough. I think the reason that him and I have become such good friends is because I'm certainly able to be a sounding board for frustration, but I think it's because we don't talk football like all that much. Like he knows we can just talk about life, and that can be his escape. Mm-hmm. Which I think that there's just like an appreciation on both ends for. I don't know how this is going to play. Like, truthfully, do not know how this is going to play out for him. It's the most mystifying part of the 2025 Steelers to me has been the tight end utilization, because like I said, they figured it out with the secondary. They figured out what wasn't working and at least made some corrections to right the ship a little bit. They never did it with the tight end room. They went down sinking the ship with this thing. Mm-hmm. 18 games and the season coming to an end, and they just rode it out the entire way. never corrected it. I don't get it. And yeah, if Arthur Smith is back, I don't know how he comes back.
And it seemed like, at least in recent weeks, the only time Pat was getting the football was when Arthur Smith was not calling the plays and they were in the hurry up and Aaron Rodgers was calling his own plays. To me, maybe that's completely incorrect, but to me, it felt that way. That whenever
certainly the Browns game, that was the case. Yeah. The Ravens game, the seam ball late was definitely in the 4-minute drill.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think Aaron was
the one that set up the Gainwell touchdown.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe there is something to that. I don't know. Again,
one catch for 18 yards in this playoff game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been a topic that I feel like we've had to dance around a little bit. I just, I'm never going to expose the conversations we have or say too much. I hope I didn't say too much, even with what I've said. Never want to put him in a bad spot. Trust me, all he says is good things in regards to the team, organization, fan base, loves it, wants to finish his career here. Sometimes I share screenshots of what he says and his reverence for this city and organization. But I think anybody professionally would have some frustrations if they were in those shoes.
Well, Braden Frehoku a few weeks ago said it, I think, best on Twitter, where he said, you're paying a guy that you paid as a top 10 in the league because Pat is paid very well and got that new contract, but you're treating him like he's a practice squad call-up at times. Like you are not including him in the offense whatsoever. When, like I said, at worst, I think that as far as a pass catcher goes, he's number 3. You look at DK Metcalf. If you want to throw in Calvin Austin, sure. Pat Freiermuth is right there at the top of your list for who are the best pass catchers of the football. Jonnu Smith is not near the top of that list. And yet at times it felt like he was being forced the football. Makes no sense in my mind. And this is not to disrespect Jonnu Smith. I just do not think that he is the type of player that Pat is, especially against man coverage. Whenever you have to get schemed open for plays, Pat is able to find those soft areas. He's able to make those types of plays like we saw in that Baltimore game. I just don't understand why you don't incorporate
if he's not getting separation. We saw, the contested catch aspect of things as well, just in the one catch yesterday. So I don't know, man. I'm hoping for the best here as a Steelers fan and as a Pat Freiermuth fan that this thing gets figured out in a positive way, and we'll see what that means this offseason. I think some conversations need to be had from both sides, but I had a couple people DMing me, asking me about it. Felt like it had to be addressed on here in some capacity. So I'm not going to say anything else on it. I'll watch it play out with the rest of you in terms of how this is going to go. But the thing is, we sit here January 13th. We're about to get into a head coaching search here within this cycle. We already think the offseason flies by in general, even when it can be slow. Can you imagine now with everything that we're going to have going on?
Even just the next couple of weeks. Tomlin was named head coach January 22nd, 2007. So you're talking about within the next 10 days, we could be seeing a new head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and they're I don't want to say they're necessarily behind the 8 ball, because we're talking about with the type of job that this is, I think it is near the top. So I think a lot of candidates are going to be not accept, they're going to accept a job somewhere else if they
before they interview here
a candidate here. But in terms of teams already have brought in a bunch of guys for interviews, so they got to get working on who they want that list to be, and I think that they are. A name that wasn't mentioned, actually. We threw out there that he coached Aaron Rodgers in the past. I think Robert Saleh is a candidate for this job.
He fits the bill outside of he's probably on the little older side for what they normally go for.
And he's been a head coach before. He is a little bit of a retread. To me, somebody threw that name out there to me and said, "How would I feel?" I said, "Who's the OC?" To me, that's the important part of that hire.
He's 46 years old, so he's not super old. He's not as old as I actually thought.
No.
I thought he was like around 50.
No, but younger, like lower 30s has been when they've hired the others.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
I would be open to it, but like you, who's the OC? If it's Arthur Smith, no thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he had was it Mike LaFleur with the Jets as his OC? Who was Aaron's guy from Green Bay too that was terrible as the Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah. Yeah, like we can't, but that might have been so like, was that really Saleh that wanted that to happen? You know? I don't know. Speaking of LaFleur, again, that would go against the Steelers with an offensive hire. Let's say negotiations between him and Green Bay do not go well. Would you do it?
Yes.
And then go get Malik Willis in free agency?
The 2022 draft comes full circle.
I don't know. That's appealing to me. I don't know that the Steelers would do that, but like, hey, why not throw out some hypotheticals at this point, right? Like they haven't done anything. We can talk about what we think they'll do and stay true to themselves, but also
on the table right now. I mean, if they do go with LaFleur, quarterback wise, on the table, you're looking at Mason Rudolph and Howard as your quarterbacks next year. I mean, why not throw a dart at Malik Willis?
I mean, and you got to think that's where Malik's trying to get to if LaFleur were to come here.
For sure. And
so like,
I feel like on everybody else. As the days go on and we get closer to this NFL draft, I don't know about for you, but to me, it's being abundantly clear that they are not taking a quarterback in round one.
I mean, I wouldn't roll out Ty Simpson. I'll say that. Whether you want
unless
them
it's
to
Kurt
or not.
Cignetti that they hire, because Kirk Cignetti just cleaned his clock.
I mean, he like Dante Moore as well, I guess, but he's either going to go back to school or they wouldn't have.
If they hire Kurt Cignetti, obviously this is we're throwing out hypotheticals. This is a big
Mendoza pulls an Eli Manning.
What? That's what I was about to ask. If they hire Kurt Cignetti, how far? Not necessarily would you be willing to go to. How far do you think the Steelers and Cignetti would be willing to go to get Mendoza in a Steelers uniform?
I mean, you can't. There's nothing that they could do. I don't think.
Like they'd have to empty the cupboard, basically.
But like, even then, like what? The Raiders just
haven't you seen Draft Day? 3 seconds.
Yeah, awful.
3 second-round picks. Number 6 all pick.
Yeah. 3 2s get you to 6. Unbelievable. Such a stupid movie, but I watched every single year the night before the draft.
So yeah. I mean, anybody that knows ball knows how terribly wrong that movie is.
Yeah,
but it's such a good movie.
Some fun hypotheticals, but yeah, it's not gonna.
Fernando Mendoza, no matter what, on a stick.
Here's the thing, though. Like, legitimately, I don't think the LaFleur thing is going to happen. I think he's going to reach a new deal and stay in Green Bay. I also don't think if he were to become available, like he's at the top of the Steelers list. But I have a hard time finding a better.
What side of the football do you specialize in? Oh, okay.
We'll put you down there. Where we got him at, like 7th on our pecking order. I have a hard time finding something more appealing to me than LaFleur and Willis as a combo. I mean, Shula Shieldhouse is up there for me too, from the Rams, going that direction. But obviously, that doesn't answer the quarterback part yet. So
sure. I don't know. We'll see. I think that here's a question for you. We'll close it out with this question.
The draft's also in Pittsburgh, by the way. Most interesting offseason ever in our lifetime.
Is it more important for the Steelers to nail the head coaching hire or nail their next quarterback?
That's such an interesting question because I'm not trying to cop out of this answer. I think once the quarterback is established, meaning a la Ravens scenario, you always got to pick that franchise quarterback over the head coach. But in terms of nailing one first, I think the head coach.
And I would agree. I think that you've kind of got to establish that culture is the wrong word to use when you're talking about the Steelers, but like I think that you have to have that foundation set in order for a quarterback to come in and have success early on.
Here's the other part of it, though. Like, say that the quarterback is in place, and like how they got there, if they didn't have that coach in place, maybe a bit mystifying. I don't know. I know it's a small sample size. Cam Ward, right, played pretty well down the stretch. If the Titans are even somewhat of an attractive job right now, it's because of him. So he's in place. Maybe that's like the parallel comparison to use here. Like, how attractive do you view that job because of Cam Ward alone? Having the quarterback in place, but they don't have the head coach in place yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I definitely think, like, I understand the argument from people saying that the Ravens would be a more attractive head coaching job right now because of the players. And that's why I think that question is interesting, because I'm not saying Cam Ward is anything what Lamar Jackson is, but knowing that you have the players that the Ravens do, I can at least get my head around why people would say that the Ravens is a better job right now.
Or the comparison. Yeah, why didn't I just use the Ravens? I was like searching for a team that has a franchise quarterback but doesn't have the head coach in place yet. And I'm like,
I mean, the Ravens are a perfect example. Like, I definitely think that job is more attractive as far as like just stepping in, especially because of the ease of the job. Not that necessarily the head coach wants the job to be easy, but I feel like knowing that you've got that type of player at that position, that makes your life a little bit easier, which I'm sure makes the job a little bit more attractive.
Yeah. No, I think you can make the argument either direction, but I'll stand by until the quarterback has like established himself as the franchise guy. I think that the coach is the more important one to hit on first. But all right, good stuff. Longer episode, over 112, an hour,
100 minutes.
Here, we're not gonna get that far.
Our old episodes used to be over 100 minutes, like 6 years ago.
Goodness. Yeah, when we discussed all the sports on one single episode. Anyways, definitely more content coming to the channel for you guys. It's been a stretch.
It's been a minute
for us. Yeah.
It's been a rough few weeks for Steelers. It's been a rough few weeks for us personally. My shoulder sicknesses that we've been dealing with, just time in general. Smitty's bald.
Yeah. A lot of things have happened.
Maybe one. I mean, well, if you guys go on Twitter, you can see that, but maybe one day you'll see it on the actual YouTube channel.
Yeah, you will. You will. But we're back. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit the comments. Your thoughts, anything we talked about today, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. If you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there, whether you're watching or listening. Check out all the links in the description to all of our great sponsors that we mentioned already and one that we have not mentioned yet. Right above Tyler right now, Marcello Electric. Let me tell you about him. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from around the 412 here. Had to take a quick second to tell you about Marcello Electric, serving Beaver, Allegheny, Lawrence, and Butler County. Whether it's residential, commercial, or service calls, our boy Brandon Marcello's got you covered. 724-614-0611. Again, that's Marcello Electric, 724-614-0611. The link below in the description takes you to his Facebook page. All his contact information is there, as well as a lot of the projects that he's been working on. Does great work. Couldn't recommend him enough. Follow us everywhere at Around the 412, all the socials. You'll find Tyler everywhere, Weiler_Teach33, and you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. By the way, we do still have to do the Rock Around the 412 prizes and stuff. Here's the thing. I need the assistant. Yeah, well, obviously we haven't been around that much to do it, but also need the assistance of somebody that we talked about on here, Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth, with making a couple of those prizes that we discussed happen. So yeah, he's going to come down to the crib sometime and take care of that. But we'll make it happen. You guys know we're good for it. So we'll be back for some more episodes. Stay tuned. If you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You know exactly when those come out. So for Smitty, for Tyler, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.